Recently, New York Times columnist Ross Douthat wrote of two paths we could take in our divided culture. We could cultivate a spirit of curiosity and conversation, or we could wage a furious war against whichever side we think is evil. Well, the internet made its choice, and in a move that shocked literally nobody, it opted for the latter. This very article, which urged us against hostilities, provoked battle cries from hot-take ninjas who live, it seems, in opposite world. In opposite world, up is down, black is white, and Ross Douthat, a conservative Catholic, has written a terrifying ode to rape culture, terrorism, and sex robots. Ross Douthat is not celebrating rape culture, terrorism, or sex robots. Do you know how I know this? Because I read the article, and I'm not living in opposite world. Or am I? Of course, that's exactly what I would say if I was living in opposite worlds, so... Ross Douthat's column begins by citing the disturbing violence of some incels. Incels are so-called involuntary celibates who feel so entitled to sex that some have gone on murderous rampages in pursuit of what they see as sexual justice. Apparently, incels are owed a sex life and feel there should be some kind of sexual redistribution so that they, the have-nots, get in on the action of the haves. Douthat, clearly not a fan of their philosophy, nor of murderous rampages more generally, pointed out the philosophy feeding the incel movement, in particular, the idea that we are owed a sex life. Douthat wrote, "The culture's dominant message about sex is still essentially Hefnerian. A message that frequency and variety in sexual experience is as close to a summum bonum as the human condition has to offer, that the greatest possible diversity in sexual desires and tastes and identities should not only be accepted but cultivated, and that virginity and celibacy are at best strange and at worst pitiable states." This is Douthat's thesis, that our culture sees sexual self-expression as our highest good and therefore as some kind of human right. There is no doubt that this feeling exists, that it feeds the incel movement, and also perhaps the market for sex robots. But Ross Douthat is neither defending incels nor praising sex bots. He's doing something far more alarming and hence the outrage. Douthat has the nerve to question whether a sex life is our birthright. In doing so, of course, Douthat is pitting himself against the incels. He's on the side of the voluntary celibates, the faithful celibates, the single, the widow, the disabled, the incapacitated, the asexual, and everyone who might be excluded when you exalt sex to a supreme marker of human worth. If he's right, he's saving us from the incels. He's saving us from a rape culture where men feel entitled to women. He's saving us from a pathetic groin-centric account of humanity. He's saving us from a pornographied world where everything is libido. And heck, he might even be saving us from the sex bots. Now that I'd like to see. It's the 15th of May, this is Speak Life, and you're watching the LIVEcast. LIVEcast, LIVEcast, welcome to the LIVEcast, 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 welcome to the show. LIVEcast, LIVEcast, welcome to the LIVEcast, 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 welcome to the show.
Hey.
Hello, we are back after 2 weeks.
Back with sex robots, so we know how to make an entrance.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, so Tuesday the 15th of May, and yeah.
If you say so,
yeah.
I'll assume that it is.
The Ides of May have come. And yes, because last week I was in Bangor, reaching out to this is the Northern Irish Bangor. Yeah, bunch of churches reaching out with the gospel in Bangor, and yeah, brilliant time.
So was it a church organised mission week type thing? What's it look like?
Yeah, it was 4 different churches in particular had gotten together, 3 Presbyterian churches and a Baptist church, and yeah, so they did all sorts of stuff, including coach tours. So they decided to advertise. It was an Eventbrite kind of thing, and they advertised on all the What's on Bangor websites, and they were offering tours around Bangor, which has quite a Christian history to it, and the tour guide sort of showed them the Christian history, and then at the end people had sort of scones and tea, and I sort of gave a little 10-minute talk on Jesus and how he's shaped history. And what was fascinating is the first time we did it 4 times. First time we did it, three people afterwards said, we want to discover more about Christianity. Please sign us up for a course. And one person said, I want to begin following Jesus.
Wow.
After doing a
bus tour.
A bus tour.
Do they have their own bus?
Yeah.
Like, how's it work?
They just rented like a big minibus, and there were about 15 seats on it. And so there was a driver and there was a tour guide.
I'm glad there was a driver.
That's
positive. That'd be a bit of an oversight, really, wouldn't it?
Well, I don't know. If you want to really put someone in the hot box and kind of come on, Ethel,
you're driving. 98.
We just put a brick onto the accelerator and say, "Who wants to trust Jesus?"
Yep.
So that was really interesting. So they did that 4 times. So that was sort of pushing the boat out.
It was a bus, not a boat.
4 buses. Yes.
Yes. You said pushing the boat out.
Yeah, that's right. I'm gonna be very
Glen.
particular. Sorry. And then I had to interview my wife one night. So for the role of wife, no, for
You've passed the test.
You've passed the test, but we have a 15-year review,
Yeah,
so coming up.
But we'll go on. We'll give it another year.
Renewable contracts.
Great.
So that was interesting.
I hadn't realised she was out there with you. Although, in fairness, I had seen your post that you were interviewing Emma, but I'd not really put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah, you thought it was just a sock puppet.
Yeah.
Of which more later. But interviewed my wife, interviewed James Schoen, who's a really interesting guy who, age 39, got a brain tumor and just his life was completely turned upside down. Brenda Hale, who was married to a soldier who died in Afghanistan in 2009. We got to hear her story. We got a magician to come and do a Saturday afternoon thing.
Yep.
But in this particular part of the world, you don't call him a magician. You call him a family entertainer.
Okay.
He's up to family entertaining and tricks and hijinks and everything but magician, right?
Okay.
Because have you ever seen that Simpsons episode where Ned Flanders reads to his children from Harry Potter? It's like it's a Christianized version of Harry Potter.
Yeah, it rings a bell. I'm not sure I've seen.
And then God threw Harry Potter and all his wizard friends into the lake of fire.
Oh, I see.
Rod and Todd are going,
You can't mention magic.
You can't mention magic.
Right,
yeah,
I see.
So I was trying desperately, don't say magician, and then just. Yeah, accidentally I just interviewed him as Brian the Warlock. Thank you so much, Brian. That was wizard fun. No, I tried not to say that. So we did that kind of event.
So it was the format in those are evenings. Apart from that, non-magician.
Yeah.
In the afternoon.
And there were morning times. I interviewed a woman for like a women's morning. Honor Davis, like an incredible story. Like she went blind age 26, and she was kind of like 90% blind at that stage. And then 20 years later, they said, we've got this pioneering kind of surgery, and we think we can restore your sight. And she had the surgery, and instead of it restoring 90% of her sight, she lost the rest of the 10%.
Wow.
And that was kind of like devastating. And then 20 years later, they say, oh no, but this time we've got the perfect surgery for you and it'll really work. And like she was on TV kind of on this journey they made documentaries about her, how she was like making this journey through, and it was going to be stunning. And her sight was restored for like a week. And she could see her husband, see her grandchildren for the first time. Her daughter was 6 months old when she went blind, and so this is the first time she's like seeing her daughters and things. And so she could see for a week, and then it fades to black again.
Wow.
It's like, wow, what a story.
That is pretty crazy, really, isn't it?
It's like hope deferred makes the heart sick, isn't it? Like Proverbs. And so, talking about her, but she just had such a vibrant faith, and she's just really had to learn how to trust in Jesus and not in circumstances. And she just, there wasn't a dry eye in the house as she was talking about her story, and so got to speak off the back of that. And so 15 different events that I got to speak at between. And
generally, just it was an interview testimony format with a talk.
Lots of that,
or a bus ride.
Yes, or a bit of non-magic magic, a bit of not magic.
Sleight of hand,
illusion.
A sleight of hand artist.
Now on the comments, Jonah Jacob has said, "I suppose there's no sock puppets to look forward to today." Well, Jonah, you're in luck.
Well, if you actually want real sock puppets, you're not in luck. But we're going to talk about it.
We can talk about it. So, which camera is this? This one here. So, one of our viewers, Evan Williams, has, I don't know if you can see that, but he's actually made for us a definitely legitimate award given to Speak Life, and for the reason it should say I hereby recognize Speak Life.
It says Herbie recognise.
I hereby recognize.
Anyway.
Evan, come on.
The love bug.
Yeah. And the award is for the most astute point made by sock puppets in 2018.
In 2018.
So
yeah. We were gutted to miss out in 2017, weren't we? So actually picking it up now has been a real honour.
I think Lutheran Satire won it that year, but
we were thinking of taking all these ones and just throwing them in the bin, just burning them, and keeping that one. No.
Pride of place.
I'm actually quite legitimately chuffed with the Sock Puppet Awards, if I'm honest. I've not won many things, so
this is it.
No.
Yeah.
Have you ever won anything apart from this? Obviously, but we don't.
Apart from these, yeah, we don't like to make a big deal of these awards.
No.
Awards, no, but I once went out with a girl who was the runner-up in the Gwyneth Bobbin Prize for Most Improvement in Home Economics. Isn't that perfect?
That doesn't even mean she was good at home economics.
No.
It's just that she'd improved.
I know, and she was second. And Gwyneth Bobbin. Isn't that the best name? Gwyneth Bobbin.
Well, Glen, she's actually here today.
She's dodged a bullet. Man, Lucy Sykes. Yeah, Lucy Sykes, you legend. But where are you now, Lucy Sykes?
Where now?
You know, she's probably. If she's continued to improve.
Yeah.
If she has continued to improve.
Where could she be now?
On that trajectory.
This is taking a turn.
But if you want to know why it is that we won this spectacular award for most astute point made by a sock puppet in 2018, this is actually the clip that won it for us.
Deals in absolutes.
But isn't that an absolute statement?
Sorry, sorry, it was
Powerful.
just single tear.
Absolutely.
No.
Very moving.
We should do more of that. Sock puppets.
More sock puppets.
Don't you think?
We've used them a few times now.
Could we crowbar them in later on? We're recording a couple more
Gonna
thornies later.
Yeah,
so.
we should. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean,
Although my
most
socks are a little sweaty today. I should probably bring in a clean pair.
Most things that we stick in our videos are crowbarred in, so I'm sure we can get some sock puppets in.
That's true.
No.
Yeah. But it would make a good point. Anyway, if you want more sock puppets, just say in the comments. Speaking of comments, Darren Hill has said, "Finally, I have caught you guys live." Nice to be caught by you, Darren.
Very contagious.
In an appropriate way. Charles Ray McNinch is just crying. Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah. We're trying to get better.
I don't speak emoji. Sorry.
Is it the laughing emoji?
It might be. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. He looks in a lot of pain, to be honest. But and Gail Denise, hello to you as well.
Good. I think Gail subscribes to my guitar channel.
Oh, does she?
I think it's Gail.
What would people get? Like, if people went to your guitar channel, what would they find?
What would they find? Guitar lessons.
Wow.
So yeah.
What's the latest thing that you've been teaching people?
The last song I did. What did I do last week? It was "Get Lucky" by Daft Punk.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And the week before that, it was "Good Times" by Chic.
How does the guitar riff go in that?
What in Get Lucky? It's like the same four chords over and over. It's like that.
Yeah.
That could be the new theme tune.
I'm up on that to get Speak Life. Yeah, maybe. So, if you haven't already subscribed, which I'm sure you have,
run,
don't walk to Crowbar Guitar.
It's worth doing because at least 20 other people think it's worth subscribing to.
Man.
So,
you know what your channel needs? Sock puppets. Sock puppets. Might be more difficult to.
Yeah, it does make it more awkward. No.
Anyway, before people complain about the banter.
It's the annoying preamble.
This is still packed full of gospel goodness.
Rich theological insight. Do you want to talk about your rant, or are we just leaving it be?
Well, okay. So I'm late to the party because I think that article by Ross Douthat was like May 2nd or May 3rd or something. So I'm like a fortnight out of date.
Well, I imagine a lot of people won't even have heard of it.
No.
Because I'd never heard of him.
No.
And I'd not read the article until this morning.
No, but you had been Googling sex robots. So
Absolutely, and that's how I came across the article. Yeah.
And you were disappointed by the lack of sex robots in said article. But
Well, I mean, the whole thing you're saying about people not understanding, like, the point of his article,
Right.
I did kind of say, I can understand why, I don't feel when I read an article,
yeah,
I should need a dictionary to be able
Right.
to work out what they're saying.
right.
And, I wouldn't say that I came away with the wrong point from his article.
Yep.
I would say that I just came away with nothing. Because
Nothing from you,
because I
Ross.
was, what?
Yeah.
He used some words
Yeah.
I just didn't know.
Yeah.
And I thought I could look this up now, but
Yeah.
I didn't.
But I didn't want to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Life is short.
Life is
So-
short. And there were so many other search terms in the engine.
So,
So many other results to explore.
Back to the Google search results for sex robots. That's right.
But I don't know. I first came upon it when someone was outraged about it, and so the outrage
course.
antennae
Of course
are
you
up.
did.
And so I don't know. But it did seem like I've never come across an article that has been like literally 180 degrees misread.
Right, so
a
a
as
complete
as
turnaround.
though he is totally on side with the incel terrorists.
And was he just not? Well, I don't think he was that clear. But was he being satirical? Was he or was he?
No, I think
don't
he
know.
was actually trying to reach across the aisle between left and right and sort of say,
Oh, yeah. You don't want to do that.
you don't want
That's
to do
gonna
that.
Cause trouble. No.
Seriously, because he sort of quoted this kind of feminist philosopher saying that she too is saying sex is not a right, and then but his
Common ground.
His
Find some common ground.
He's finding some common ground with her, but if he just found common ground with her, that would have been good. But he also said, and like on the far right, like nonsense side of things, there is these incels and involuntary celibates who, some of whom turn to terrorism to further their cause for the fair redistribution of sex in the world. And so just him mentioning that, I think, just triggered people and people's ability to kind of engage with views that are not their own and to pick up on nuance and things. I don't know. And I just think that he was actually quite strong on sex is not a right. And I think that people couldn't actually hear him say that because I think they're kind of thinking, he can't be saying that. I mean, we all know that, the highest point of human flourishing is sexual self-expression.
Absolutely.
And so when he wasn't saying that, people were they didn't know where to go. They thought he was just like, on the side of the incels and the sex robots. But Ross Douthat, for the record, is not on the side of incels and sex robots.
Right. Well.
But,
Yeah. Because I saw a very long kind of tweet thread. I
Yes.
think he was clarifying his position.
Yes. Yeah.
Which was much clearer.
Right.
We should hope a clarification would be.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless you're
but there
Jeremy
were still
Corbyn
people-
about anti-Semitism.
Well, there were still people ripping into him
Yeah.
off the back of that, though, when he was just, and he said some very clear things.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
But I didn't read his article and think to myself, oh, he's leaping to the defense of
Right. Yeah.
these people who do these things. I didn't get that at all. But
No.
some people, though, I don't know. Some people are like a dog with a bone, aren't they? That they see something in an article. It could be one word or a
Yep.
phrase, and they link onto it and
Triggering.
go with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's it. That's what the whole triggering thing comes from, isn't it? You get triggered
Yeah.
by something. And
Yeah. Which is just ironic because he starts the article by saying, we could do two things. We could have curiosity and conversation, or we could just wage war with people who we consider to be evil.
We
I'm like, let's do
we
that
choose war.
All right. So, and this is why we can't have nice things.
Absolutely.
So, sex robots, tick. That's it. If you're looking for more about sex robots, that's all we've got. That's all we've got. But it was quite a dystopian vision though of the future. Like, I think that's the doorbell, Andy. I think
So
you don't need to know that, but Andy has just
he's just gone
scuffled.
under the table.
Yeah.
Right. Well, my understanding was what he was saying, look, there's this generation or group of people, not just these incels, but other people who, because we live in a society that says or gives the impression sex is a right and the highest possible thing, people who aren't getting sex and feeling like they should be are reacting sometimes like those incels, like we've done
Right.
these atrocities. But he was saying this sex bot thing is society's answer to that. And he was saying rather than kind of re-examining our culture, so for him, I think a good thing would be, and probably as Christians we'd agree, that it would be good for us to re-examine our view as a culture on sex, and so that there is a place for celibacy and, all that, and we're dealing with people who are facing loneliness. That would be a good thing to do, but actually as a society, of course, we won't do that because we'd just go, well, that's going backwards.
Yeah.
So, of course, the most sensible thing for us to do is sex robots.
Yeah.
And he was kind of saying, isn't this a bit terrifying that this is what the future is?
Yeah, exactly.
So rather than people having healthy, loving, warm relationships that perhaps they're seeking, sex robot.
Sex robots. And see, you just put that much clearer than Ross
he did.
Do that. Give that man a column.
If he just said that, yeah.
So, he does need to take it on the chin that, if there's that level of misunderstanding, then something's gone wrong in this communication event.
Yeah, I think, that's probably fair.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if I've understood from our conversations what he was saying, and he seems like he was being relatively reasonable.
Yeah, and I think that's the power of rants. The power of rants is to set right what once was wrong, and I think we've done that now.
Absolutely.
Good. Now, another thing we've wanted to do this afternoon, we're gonna think about sex robots. That's done. No more. No more.
You keep
about
saying
sex.
it's done, but you keep mentioning it again and again, Glenn. You've got to let it go.
So Moorish. They're so Moorish. Once you bot. Anyway, you just can't stop. So, but now we're going to move on because we're going to talk about suffering, and we're going to talk about what is God up to in suffering. And that was our thorny question that we asked last night, and it went out as a video. But before that, we thought that North Korea, South Korea are in the news a lot at the moment. And I've been seeing this article that goes around quite a lot that's incredibly optimistic about the prospect for peace and the prospect for reunification, but also the prospect for kind of revival again in North Korea. And that's just such an incredible prospect when you think about North Korea, the hardest place on planet Earth to be a Christian. Could it be once again like a center for Christian faith and revitalization again? So I thought, why don't we ask Liam Steele, who's a friend from Union. You might know that we run the Union Learning community here in Eastbourne, and Paul is a graduate from Union. And in fact, Evan Williams also studied with us at Union. And so that's something that we do. We partner together, Speak Life and Union with things. And I got to know Liam a little bit from that. He's spent 15 years in South Korea, and he knows the scene. He's married to a Korean himself. And so I just thought we could get his wisdom on what is happening on that peninsula and how we can pray about it. So without further ado, let's go to the interview. At the moment, is that right?
Yes, that's right. Sunny Bridgend. It's actually very sunny today.
Yeah, sunny Bridgend. And we're in sunny Eastbourne on the Sunshine Coast. So, are you used to much sunshine? You grew. You were born in Canada, is that right?
I was born in Scotland.
Born in Scotland, and then went to Canada very early on.
So I'm familiar with ice and snow, and lots of winter sports happening. I'm not much into ice hockey, as my compatriots would be in Canada, but
how cold could it get? Where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up around Canada. My father was a pastor, so we moved around a little bit. The coldest I felt was about minus 45 with wind chill that made it minus 80.
Okay, I was about to ask, is that Fahrenheit or Celsius?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Celsius. If you can get your mind around, I was about primary school year 7, and
wow.
So
that's 2 jumper weather, isn't it? That's
absolutely.
It's definitely 2 jumper weather.
I think it was about 4 jumper weather plus a coat. Yes.
How does your blood not freeze?
In that too.
Yeah. So that's one of those points where you put the kettle, the water from the kettle into the air, and it kind of pulverizes. And
it was shockingly cold. The schools were still open. So
not here, they're not.
No, but
if it's 1 degree below, everything shuts down.
Yeah, I was shocked that Bridgend actually got snow this year, at about 5 centimeters, and of course we're out playing, and the city's shut down.
Yeah,
the town. It's not a city.
Catastrophe. Snowmageddon.
Yeah. We were, all my Canadian friends were having a very good laugh.
Yeah. So you're in Canada from age 2 to age 26.
About that, yeah. And then God sent me to Korea, and I went for financial reasons, really, to teach English for a year or two, and end up staying 15 years. He introduced me to the woman who would become my wife, gave me 3 children, and placed me in ministry there too. So God, looking back, you can see God's hands and direction and the experiences and where he placed me in the various jobs that I had.
So was it a sense that you had, like, career was on your heart before you went there, or it was literally business took you there?
I played around with martial arts when I was in high school and college. So I wanted to do the Asia thing, I think, when I was finishing university. And some friends recommended Korea as a great way and a kind of a gateway, because they'll give you housing and they pay you, and then you get to travel on your off time.
Who pays you?
The schools that I was working for.
Okay.
Whatever.
Okay. Yeah, to teach them English and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was paid to teach English, and then I got to do a bit of travel, so Thailand and some other things, but nothing more than tourism. Then God sent me to Seoul from some of the outlying regions, and then into Seoul, into the direct line of fire from North Korea. Seoul is within artillery range. But so I met my wife. I wanted to move to Seoul to be closer to her and get married. And then I was working at a university there, and then he said, train for ministry and see what I'm going to do with you.
Okay.
Now here I am in Wales.
Why?
It's a natural progression.
What is the link?
Why Wales? Yeah, the Korean church has a very strong relationship with the UK, especially in Wales. The first Protestant missionary was a man named Robert Germain Thomas, and he's considered the first Protestant missionary. And as he was getting off his boat, the General Sherman in Pyongyang, actually, he was executed on the beach. His first time into Korea. He'd been some of the outlying islands before, giving out Bibles, but this is his first time to come inland. And generally they rejected the gospel, but he came in on an American ship, trade vessel,
right? And
they set fire to the ship. He jumped and swam to shore with a load of Bibles, and the legend is that he gave a Bible to his executioner. So he said, "Here, receive the Bible. This will save your life." And the man lopped off his head and took the Bible and papered his walls with it. They would use paper as wallpaper. Basically, they paper their houses with that. And it was good quality paper, so he papered his wall. And long story short, he read the gospel as he was
dusting the house.
Papering his wall. And that house became a church.
Amazing.
So his executioner became an elder in the church, and then about a generation later, you have this great revival in Pyongyang, and it was called the Jerusalem of the East. The church was so strong in the early 1900s.
Wow.
And then with Japanese occupation, Christians were actually considered to be great nationalists and great patriots because they refused to bow to the Japanese emperor, and they to seek the freedom of people. And so the church grew and grew, and then in the 1970s you get these mega churches that growing up, and it just became massive. And they all have this legacy rooted in this young Welsh man. I think he was about 27 when he was killed.
And what year was he killed?
1866.
Okay. Because things really, really took off on the peninsula in the turn of the century, really.
There were since the 17th century, there had been people coming in, but it was mostly Catholic missions, and you see that kind of in the southern regions. But Robert Jermaine Thomas was the one who really tried to push for it. And then after him, there was more openness to receiving the gospel as the churches became established. But in like 1901, it was only like 1% of the population was Christian. And then after 1907, it just boomed. And so now it's about, depending on your source, it's about between 25 and 30% of the population is Christian.
Amazing. And what do people put that down to? I know that like prayer is just a massive part of Korean spirituality. Is that?
Prayer is huge.
Yeah.
They gather early mornings almost every day. They have, basically, it's a concert of prayer. You see people gathered in the church 5 a.m. or earlier during the special prayer weeks, like the week before Easter, for example. They'll gather 3, 4 in the morning, pray for hours on end. And a lot of their prayer time is spent to pray for this reconciliation between North and South Korea, among other issues. But fervent prayer is one of the great markers of the South Korean church. I think you'll never experience anything like it. And if you have a chance to go, if Union takes you over, have a chance and just witness that. It's amazing to see.
Does it rub off on you? Does it? Can you catch it? Is it contagious? Like,
I think maybe
what has it done for your prayer life?
Well, it shows you the importance of prayer and how the Holy Spirit can work, and how prayer is answered, and just how desperate people are for God. That cry out of desperation that is so common in Korea that you see. I think we can learn from that and take from that prayer. It's kind of a concert of prayer. People are praying together, but still kind of individually as well. So it's kind of a corporate prayer that's led by the pastor, and then he'll give you what to pray for, and then you all just go off.
Okay.
And it rises up in this great cacophony of sound, and there's nothing quite like it, really, to be there. I mean, I was a little bit bitter about being there so early in the morning, but you get over that, and you just realize that these people love the Lord, and they want to experience more of Him, and you see that.
I guess maybe you partly answered what I was going to say. I was just going to say, why do you think prayer is so massive there when you compare it to maybe like here in the UK church or maybe the Western church? I mean, lots of people will hear about people getting up at 3, 4 in the morning and be a little bit like, wow, that's really extreme. And, it will be very alien to us. Why do you think it's so huge there and not so huge here?
That's a good question. I think because the history that they've experienced, I think that they're kind of rooted in animism and Buddhism. So a lot of that can kind of creep in. Not that they're animistic or Buddhist in trying to syncretize Christian faith, but a lot of that kind of style kind of comes in of their prayer. So it's kind of a cultural thing as well that it comes in. I mean, the people at my church in Bridgend, they're no less passionate about God. They're just a lot quieter.
Yeah.
I mean,
Except when the rugby comes on.
Right. Singing hymns at a football game.
Yeah. Yeah. And what has that meant for the North as well? So is it 1953? That's when that's
when the division was made after the Korean War, which never officially ended until the recent talk that we're hearing about.
And what would have been sort of the relative strengths of the church North versus South at that point?
I think you have a strong Presbyterian influence in the North. The first Christian colleges were in Pyongyang, and there even remains today a college, the Pyongyang University of Science and Technology. It's funded by evangelical groups in the West. So there's still some influence. There's still some inroads there. Kim Jong-un's great-grandfather was an elder in the church.
Right.
Many people might not know that, but
Right.
But there's an influence. And then you see, when they talk about the great leader, Kim Il-sung, and the dear leader, a lot of the language they use is really very similar to the South Korean worship style as well.
Right.
So a real kind of religious fervor surrounding the personality cult of the Kims. You can find on YouTube and through various online stuff, you can find documentaries about North Korea. You can see that yourselves.
Yeah.
It's astonishing just to see the similarities between the church in South Korea and then the Kim regime, how they demand such worship, really.
Worship, yeah. And ideologically, is it an atheist state, North Korea officially?
It's an atheist state, but they kind of deify the Kims.
Right.
So there's a lot of supernatural legends that have risen up surrounding the birth of Kim Jong-il, Kim Jong-un's father, that he was miraculously born on a mountainside and just was walking from day one, or some kind of supernatural.
Yeah. It's like G.K. Chesterton's line, isn't it? When you stop believing in God, you don't believe in nothing, you believe in anything.
Right. Yeah. But I think there's still, ironically, a hunger for a gospel, for a savior. You see so many defectors come out saying, well, the church is the one that gave us hope. Because we connected with these Christians and they sacrificed from themselves. They gave us, even though we didn't. Why are they giving us money? Why are they giving us this help? And it's like, well, because they love Jesus and they want to see you be saved. So,
is there like a cultural memory of Christianity for your average North Korean?
Maybe not the average North Korean. I think that's been all but wiped out because of the gulags and the punishments that are due. Like owning a Bible is a capital crime.
Wow.
In North Korea, they'll kill your whole family if you have one Bible in your house. So children are told to report their parents if they see any kind of questionable literature, which would include a book with a cross on the cover.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
down
to wipe it out. I don't think they've succeeded entirely.
Right. And estimates, I see lots of different estimates on how many Christians there might be in North Korea. I've seen one at sort of 100,000, one at sort of 400,000. I don't know.
It's probably within that range. It's hard to get an exact number. The church is very underground. There are, I think, 4 official state churches, 2 Protestant, a Catholic, and an Orthodox church. But you'll be hard pressed to find anything but the party line from those official churches.
And down south, how do Christians in South Korea kind of think about the situation politically and spiritually in the north?
Christians in South Korea, we have to differentiate between how they think of the regime and how they think of the everyday person. Now, in the church that I was involved with in South Korea, they would have weekly prayer meetings, prayer concerts for reconciliation between the North and South, reunification. That's always been a very major line of thought and line for prayer within the church in South Korea. People really want to see the country brought back together. Christians know that the best way for this is really through Jesus, that our reconciliation to God comes from Jesus. I think more liberal denominations might say that's a here and now thing, kind of a what is it?
Liberation theology type stuff.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, right.
Kind of a liberation kind of theology, and that can be read out of it. But I think more Orthodox Christians would say that the best hope for North Korea is Jesus, but reconciliation can come through the Holy Spirit working and opening those doors. And a lot of them would see what's currently happening as that great potential for the Holy Spirit providing these opportunities for the gospel to come forward.
So how how has Trump's election kind of changed that with all the stuff we're seeing at the moment going on? How's that kind of affected the mood over there?
When I first arrived in Korea, it was kind of quiet. There would be the occasional shelling or like gunfire across the border or whatever. And I would say to my South Korean coworkers, aren't you scared of this? Isn't this worrying? And they said, no, this happens all the time. We're just so used to it. We don't bother with it anymore. But then when Trump was elected, his bombast and his rhetoric kind of countered Kim Jong-un's bombast and rhetoric in a similar way. So while we were used to the North Korean saber rattling, Trump was really a wild card. And so we didn't really know what to expect. We were more afraid of what he would do than what we he's got the button. Will he actually do it? So we're more worried about that. And then North Korea seemed to be kind of just goading them on, saying, yeah, we'll bring it.
And then Trump tweeted out Rocket Man and
so
little Kim is Rocket Man.
But it seems that they have listened a bit to this strong line of rhetoric, and that seems to have opened some ears, I guess. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Trump, really, but if this can bring about an openness and a reunification, then him and the new President Moon in South Korea, I mean, this would be a great opportunity to see political gain. We still have to remember that despite all of the positive news, the church is still struggling. The church is officially still under a great deal of oppression.
Yes. Yeah. But you do see hope for political gain. You do see hope for reunification, for instance, in this moment.
Well, if you believe the rhetoric, I tend to be a little bit hesitant to believe it because we've heard stuff like this before in the 90s and in the early 2000s. We've kind of heard this before, so I tend to be hopeful but hesitant is how I like to say it. Yes, I want to see reunification. This is the first time we've heard the North Korean leader leaving the country to go and visit other leaders outside of North Korea. Stepping over the border to South Korea, shaking hands, smiling with the South Korean leader, saying, we want to end the war. We want to officially declare that this war is over. We want to have peace. Our God is a God of peace. Of course we desire that. We love hearing that. So we've got a lot of Christians praying even harder probably now in South Korea that this will be a success.
Because it seemed to be, when apartheid ended, it seemed to end all in a hurry. And in the background, you've got a whole bunch of praying Christians. And, when the Berlin Wall came down, it came down all in a hurry. And, there seemed to be a lot of Christians praying behind it. And, if God's going to work in a surprising way anywhere, maybe in Korea is exactly the place.
Well, we're hopeful. I'm kind of at a wait and see kind of mentality, but very, very hopeful.
Yeah. So what should we be praying for the North in particular?
For the North in particular, pray for the church, pray for the saints there, that they'll be strong, that they'll stand up in the face of persecution. Pray that the persecution would end, and that Kim Jong-un himself would come to Christ. That's their only real hope, is if the leader comes to Christ, then we have great, great hope. And he's not beyond the reach of the gospel either. That God can save him. He's no atrocity that he's ever done is beyond the reach of the gospel. So
that's interesting.
That's my ultimate prayer, is that Kim Jong-un and the leaders surrounding him would come to Christ. Strength for the church, strength for Christians there, for groups that come in to work with North Koreans who are from evangelical Christian backgrounds. They're not allowed to explicitly evangelize, but they do a lot of good work in helping orphans and schools and pregnant mothers.
There was an article online that's been going around. I read it sort of last week, I think. That was incredibly hopeful about certainly the access that evangelistic missions and aid organizations will be able to have in the North. Is that factually correct, that there is now a greater ability to teach the Bible in the North?
I think there's a potential for that. I think that perhaps the report was a little overly optimistic. I think, like I said, I'm kind of at a wait and see, hopeful but kind of mentality that I've got. There's nothing explicit that Kim Jong-un said, at least openly, that suggested that he is now a thing in North Korea. But we hear the line that he's saying, and that he wants to create an openness. He wants to open it for Western investment. So that would bring Christian missionaries, that could bring the doors open. I saw one Facebook friend of a friend posting. I actually saw their post, so I can take it for their word, that they were playing worship songs in Pyongyang.
Okay.
Christian hymns. So there is hope.
Yeah.
We still wait and see.
And let's just finish on, because you're going from Korea to Wales is part of a bigger thing, really, isn't it? That's just as the original missionaries went out from here to bless Korea. Now they're sending loads of people and loads of resources this way in order to bless the church that had blessed them back in the past. Tell me about some of that movement from Korea to the West. Well,
you see, a lot of support is coming this way. I think the church that I'm involved with, they're a big supporter of union. They're a big supporter of the work that we're doing. But in Europe in general, they see a great need for the gospel. So they want to see leaders raised up locally among the local people so that they'll go out and plant churches because they know better what their local context is. So they want to see leaders raised up and churches planted. So there's a great vision, there's a great participation and partnership between the church in Korea, the church in the UK, churches in Europe. And so we're seeing a great influx, reverse missionaries like myself, coming back to my country of origin to witness for the gospel. I wouldn't have chosen that for myself necessarily, but God works in great ways. And I'm happy doing his work here. So.
Yeah. And it's exciting seeing what God's doing through Union as well, and they're in Wales, and through Union blessing so many others in Europe and further afield. So
it's exciting times.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, Liam, thank you so much for sparing time with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, and you've really helped us to get a vision for North and South Korea, and hopefully that'll inspire our prayers, and maybe some of that Korean prayerful spirit of supplication will rub off on us. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. It'd be great.
All right. Well, all the best. God bless, Liam.
Thanks,
Thank
Liam.
you. Blessings.
So there
now
we
we're
are.
Back.
Now we're back. Now we're back live. So yes, we recorded that earlier with Liam Steele at Union. And if you want to check out more about Union, go to union-mission.org, and you can see some of the things that they're doing. And listen, if you want to study with us using the Union material, we want to be able to offer the graduate diploma and get in contact, and maybe we could sort out a way of studying together, and then maybe going on mission together and recording live casts together. You never know.
This could be you.
This could be
here.
you. How attractive is that as an option? Brilliant. So every live cast we try to talk about what's in the news. We try to talk about what's new with us as a ministry, and we also try to talk about our thorny questions. We released one yesterday. What was the title of the one yesterday?
Yeah, so it was Why Doesn't God Do Something About Suffering? And it was the second part of a little mini-series on suffering. So still part of our Thorny Questions series, but we're doing a few on suffering. So we're probably got at least one more on suffering, haven't we?
I think maybe two more.
Maybe two more. There you go then. So we looked last week at how does a good God fit with a bad world? Mm-hmm. And then obviously, as I said, we picked up this week with, well, why isn't God actually doing something about suffering? And it's quite an asked question, isn't it? You know, like, if there is a God, why doesn't he stop all the bad things, basically? is the thing people ask.
It's always the number one thing. So this Saturday, I'm going to the Unbelievable conference in London, and we've been asked to do 5 of the hardest questions that people could possibly think of. There was a big poll, and so me and Andy Bannister from Solas, we're going to try and answer these top 5 ones. And surprise, surprise, suffering. Suffering is right up there.
Well, it's like when you came and spoke at our youth event. We did the 4 questions, and there's this big pile of, all the other questions had a kind of few people had asked these, and then the suffering one was like this big stack, wasn't it? And everything from, why is there so much suffering? Kind of very generic, wide questions to, why does my family hate me? Why did you let my nan die?
Yes.
Very specific. So all the same. All different questions, but all getting to the same thing, really. Like, why is this bad stuff happening? Why aren't you doing anything about it?
And that's why we're going to take 4 videos at least on the subject. Last week, we kind of thought about how if you go away from the Christian story, that doesn't give you the problem with evil that you need to be having. That actually, it's a good thing to have a problem with evil. God's got a problem with evil. So Jesus actually invites you to have a problem with evil. So last episode, we thought about how when you walk away from Jesus, you no longer have the problem with suffering that you need. And then this week, we've been thinking about how if you walk away from Jesus, you don't have the solution to suffering that we all crave. So let's have a look at this clip.
Last time we saw that God has a problem with suffering, and that's a good thing. According to the Bible, God does not make his peace with a suffering world. Unfortunately, we do. Usually, human beings do not have the problem with suffering that we should. So for instance, if you believe in karma, you believe that all suffering is ultimately just, it's deserved, it's not technically a problem. To use the language of computer programming, suffering is not a bug, it's a feature.
It's similar if you believe in chaos. That is, if you believe that there is no ultimate power in charge of the cosmos. If you think everything is random, then nothing is wrong. And so, once again, suffering and the deadly struggle for survival is not a bug, it's a feature. So with these natural human responses to suffering, karma and chaos, we don't have the problem with suffering we should, and in this episode, we'll see that we don't have the solution to suffering that we crave.
Karma says existence is suffering. That's the...
So, we're about to talk about in the video, and we've got links to this in the comments if you're watching on Facebook, and we'll have links in the YouTube description as well. When we talk about karma and chaos, those are kind of ways of summarizing a whole bunch of different worldviews, really. But karma is one way of thinking about the world in which what goes around comes around. Chaos is sort of summarizing a more atheistic worldview in which everything's just random. Random. So if it's all about karma, we've already thought about how you don't have a problem with unjust suffering because there's no such thing as unjust suffering in karma. Everybody gets what's coming to them. But with karma as well, there's no real solution to suffering, and that's what we all crave. Because, in the Four Noble Truths, yes, life is suffering. And, the goal is to get rid of suffering, but the way you get rid of suffering is to get rid of yourself. First of all, you do not attach to this suffering world, you detach. And then if you follow the Eightfold Path, then eventually you get to nirvana, where you're blown out, where you dissolve into the ocean of being like a drop of water in the sea. And there's no more suffering in that sense, because everything's just been dissolved away, but there's no more you either. So that was the big problem with sort of karma. It doesn't give you a future. And then you were thinking about how chaos doesn't give you a future either.
Well, no, not at all. And often people who would espouse a view that it is all just completely random, the kind of things they'll say is, well, you know what, don't worry, it can't get any worse,
right,
or things can only get better,
right?
And of course, the reality is, when if it is completely random, and if it really is chaos, if there is nothing else than these random forces, neither of those things are true.
Right.
It could get worse.
Right.
And it might never get any better,
right.
And we kind of, it was a bit, the section I think we in the video where we talked about this is a little bit tongue in cheek, about singing the sun will come out tomorrow and all that, but who knows, maybe we won't even wake up tomorrow, or maybe the sun will explode tomorrow, and
right.
or it will one day be gone, and so on.
Yeah.
But at least Star Wars is coming out, so let's buck up. But it made me think. It reminded me of a few times when we've chatted about Stephen Fry.
Mm.
Who obviously a very hardened atheist, known for his atheism, but also a sufferer from depression. And speaking about depression, you know, using this analogy of the weather, you know, some days it rains and you've got to accept you're going to get wet. But I just remind myself that the sun will come out tomorrow. And it struck me, to me, that just seems like a very strange thing for him to say, because, I mean, for him, as someone who struggles with depression, it feels like a very tone deaf thing to say. Right. You know, if you were depressed and someone said to you, "Don't worry, the sun will come out tomorrow," that just feels like a very empty thing to say. And for someone who suffers from depression to actually say that,
especially if you know that they have no warrant for saying that.
Well, exactly. That's the thing. He's got no guarantee that it will. I mean, what do you say? I mean, I suppose there's been a number of people recently, haven't they? Like Avicii, who took his own life. Last year we had Chester Bennington from Linkin Park, you know, and there's footage of him, like, on the day, you know, of that he took his life, like earlier in the day, playing with his kids and his family, laughing and... You know, but the sun didn't come out the next day because he didn't wake up the next day, you know, because he took his own life. And so it strikes me that it's a completely empty thing to say. But if you do believe everything's random, there's just no guarantee that the sun will come out again. Yeah. You know?
And it's just so different to if you want to give Christian hope to somebody and say, look, Jesus is risen, you know, we can say that things are going to get better.
Well, absolutely. And that's why I love that, like the clip we have at the end with the Lord of the Rings bit. You know, this is just a passing shadow. You know, that a new day will come and whatnot. Actually, in the Christian story, that's true. Actually, this is just a passing shadow. And there, you know, he does quote about the sun in there. And when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. You know? Which we can say as Christians, from a Christian perspective.
Yes.
From an atheistic perspective.
Yeah.
You can't at all.
You can't. Or but you want to. And you most feel you have to.
Yeah.
You know, you're in the tunnel, there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I need to give somebody hope because hopeless suffering is just unbearable. So Stephen Fry wants to be able to comfort people, which is a good thing.
That's why it's so hard, like when you have, you know, people who, friends who are not believers and maybe they lose someone.
Right.
I mean, it's difficult when a Christian friend or, you know, loses a family member or whatever, and you don't want to just be the trite person, you know, you just say like, oh well, they're with the Lord now, you know, and because actually sometimes that can just be very trite and actually it's better to just acknowledge it is painful,
right?
But at least you know when you go to a funeral of a Christian, there's a hope,
right? Whereas
when you go to the funerals of the non-Christian, or you're talking with a non-Christian friend who's lost a family member who wasn't a Christian, I'm sitting there going, what am I supposed to say here? Because I think there is no hope for that.
Very bleak.
You know, and if you think that is all there is, and I think basically most people must know at root that. I think we're very good at distracting ourselves from that hopelessness.
Yeah.
You know, that's why, you know, we fill our lives with all kinds of sex bots.
Sex
you know?
bots, yeah.
Why not?
I thought we were done with sex bots, but no.
They just keep coming up.
Come on, Paul, you're obsessed.
But it's that thing, I think people, you park it over there, don't you?
Yeah.
The darkness, the void.
Until, you know, Prince dies, and you suddenly rediscover your faith because he says, I guess heaven needed one more lead guitarist.
Singing like, Purple Rain in Heaven. And
Suddenly people rediscover. But again, it's this groundless thing. We know that we need to offer people hope because hopelessness is just unbearable. And so we offer people a hope that is not grounded in anything real. And what's fascinating to me with Stephen Fry is it's a really good instinct that he has to want to comfort people. It's just that when he wants to comfort people, he needs them to stop thinking. He needs them to stop believing the atheistic world that he's telling them about, right? So actually for Stephen Fry, for his own sense of mental health, he needs to detach himself from his atheism. He needs to think less about his worldview. Whereas for a Christian, if we're going through the pit, and we can go through the pit, and Christians go through the pit just as much, but we actually need to ground ourselves further in our worldview.
Yeah, and I mean, you cling to Jesus more, don't you?
Right.
In the midst of it. And I mean, that's what that video finishes with in the Lord of the Rings clip. Yeah. People are holding on to something. What are we holding on to? And we say, you know, Jesus says, I'm the resurrection and the life.
Right.
You know, do you believe this? And actually, that is what you hold on to. And I think actually, you know, it's when you go through suffering, you know, so like, I think you cling to Jesus more in the suffering, don't you? Perhaps than when you're everything's just good and going well.
Absolutely.
And obviously that's not how it should be, in the sense that we should be clinging to Jesus all the time.
Right.
But it's easy to kind of get comfortable.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's I think when we've faced difficult things, there's a comfort in knowing that it's not random.
Right. Right.
So I mean, given things that have happened to us like recently, and doctors have said to us, oh, it's just random. You can't predict these things.
Right.
In a sense, from a worldly point of view, it is random. These things do just happen. But it wasn't random, in the sense that we know, no, God's in control, and that's a good thing, And I think actually sometimes it's pushing into a different territory slightly here, but sometimes Christians haven't dealt with that idea that God is in control of all the suffering that goes on.
Right.
But when I've preached on it and I've said, God is in control of all those things, you might not like the sound of that, but imagine the alternative, that God is not in control of any of this bad stuff that's happening.
Yeah.
That's a real nightmare.
He's asleep at the wheel, or
Yeah, so it's much better for us as Christians to know God is in control.
Yeah.
And that actually we know there is a path out the other side.
Right. And that the way that he's bringing us through that is through suffering.
And that is the pattern of Christ. It's the pattern of the Christian life.
We would wish that it was a different way, but what do we know? Apparently, the way to God's good future is through the valley of the shadow, and the way to resurrection is the cross. Apparently, but in that way, we can know fellowship with the Son of God even more.
Yeah.
So we've got lots more to say about suffering. We'll probably have 2 more thorny questions on it, at least. So that means another couple of live casts to think these things through. Why don't you get in touch in comments? Let us know what it is that sustains you in suffering, and how you would like us to address these issues. Plenty more thorny questions to ask, and if you've got ones that you'd want Paul and I to address, then do get in touch in comments, and we'll try and have a go.
Through the medium of sock puppets.
Through the medium of sock puppets. You could set us a challenge. Yes. The problem of suffering discussed by
socks.
Very good. Well, pleasure to be with you guys, and do subscribe on YouTube, do like us on Facebook, do subscribe to our podcast, and you'll get all this audio but without our lovely visages. But nonetheless, you can play us at double the speed as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Get us done on a podcast. So that's one bonus. Brilliant, and I'll let you know next week how the Unbelievable Conference goes on Saturday. Still tickets available. Go to Premier Radio and you'll discover the Unbelievable Conference there, and might see you there on Saturday. But otherwise, I guess we'll see you all on Tuesday.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, God bless. See you.
See you.
LIVEcast, welcome to the LIVEcast, welcome to the show. LIVEcast, welcome to the LIVEcast, welcome to the show.